Well, what do you think I meant when I said I want to look like the Xylian leader? Eyeliner. All about the eyeliner. Welcome back, Kaiju fans. It's another episode of yours truly, the Kaijuologist. Tonight's show is brought to you by an exciting new drink. It is Svedka vodka, grapefruit, and jalapeno. It's appropriate because, much like the films we will be discussing tonight have too many monsters in them, well, I have a feeling this drink has too many flavors in it. Bottoms up. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Alright, you guys. So, since I have gone through the categories, we've talked about the versus category, we've talked about the solo adventures. Tonight we're getting into that weird amorphous space in between them, the Kaiju adventure. And we will be doing a compare and contrast between two prime examples, Destroy All Monsters, and of course, Godzilla Final Wars. Now, a big part of what makes a Kaiju adventure effective is the vehicle, the plot that is giving us a reason to have multiple kaiju in a film going crazy doing different things. So I think only appropriate that the first thing we have to compare and contrast are the aliens. Now, alien invasion tends to be the most common motif used to get us our monsters all in one place, give us an excuse to have all these monsters roaming at once. The films are very similar and yet very different. I would say Godzilla Final Wars feels like it's taking more cues from Invasion of Astro Monster. The names of the aliens are bizarrely similar. I'm going to call them Xylians because I'm not even sure what the official name was for Final Wars. But, you know, we have that whole premise at the get-go that they're peaceful aliens. They're here to help. They're not here for a terrible alien invasion. And indeed, we even see the leader of the Xylians insinuate that a peaceful compromise of some sort of the two cultures coming together is desirable until he's quickly assassinated. It's kind of a sloppy plot for the Xylians, though. Why does the leader think peace is so good when he has already dispatched of some of Earth's leaders and replaced them with Xylians? It doesn't seem very peaceful. Likewise, why even set up the premise of monsters attacking? Why set up the premise of Gorath, the planet about to crash into Earth, if what he wants is peace? It seems decidedly unpeaceful for a manipulation that's supposed to result in a peaceful decision. Anyway, so let's look at the Kilax. I like the Kilax a whole lot better, to be honest. In general, we'll get more into it. I think Destroy All Monsters, it's just more classic. It's paced better. It's got the advantage, too, of being a classic 60s feeling kaiju film. So some of the schlock and cheese is easier to forgive than with Godzilla Final Wars. A lot of Final Wars is kind of baffling, whereas with Destroy All Monsters, it feels very classic. It feels very standard for what was going on in the films at the time. And we get this premise of Monster Island. It sets up a premise that gets used throughout the rest of the series. And actually, it's one of the few motifs within the Toho Kaiju genre that escapes into the bigger pop culture hemisphere, I guess. When you bring up Monster Island, for some reason, that is something even non-Kaiju fans have an idea of. That's where Godzilla and his friends live. So Destroy All Monsters is just it just gets an easier pass in general. Anyway, the aliens, the Kilaaks, they're fun, and what I like the best about them is unlike any other alien invasion we've seen in these films, they don't reveal themselves until they have already played their full hand. They've already wiped out massive cities, caused huge devastation, and then they show themselves. They're like what every good supervillain is supposed to be. Instead of sitting there and telling you what they're going to do and then doing it, giving our heroes plenty of time to subvert the plot, they hit the ground running. They are already there. They have already taken over Monster Island, and then they make their presence known. It's a little more badass. I like the whole aspect of them all being females. I've brought this up a few times. I like that Ishiro Honda doesn't treat women as these petty, pretty little objects in the background of his films. And this is another example where the main threat are females. The whole race is female. And then you've got that weird, like, living organic rock thing they do that it gives you a nice little plot point that they are susceptible to temperature. I forget if it's really hot or really cold. I think it's maybe the cold that they can't live in. But it's fun. It feels almost like very Doctor Who. Like this would be a fun alien race within the Doctor Who universe. So the Kilaaks are just, yeah, they're more fun in general. The Xylians, it's also been there and done that. And then it's just crazy goofy. Not just goofy, but kind of stupid too. The one thing that I find so frustrating with the Xylians is by the end, where we've had all these big battles, we're getting to our big climactic showdown, and then the Xylian leader has to spend, I don't know, 5-6 minutes running through exposition that would have been more interesting at the top of the film, for one. But he's also handing, I think, Ozaki, the main mutant protagonist, he's handing him all the cards. He says, "You're a Kaiser, you're one of these powerful special individuals like I am." Why tell him that? If you hadn't said anything, he might not have kicked your ass and blown up your ship at the end. So they're a lot more traditional comic book. I mean, that's Final Wars. Final Wars to me almost feels like an exaggerated anime that somebody was trying to make into live action. And so I see why some people enjoy that. To me, it feels like too far removed from the atmosphere of your typical kaiju film. Anyway, we'll get on with that later. Let's move into the monsters, because another part, if you're going to do a kaiju adventure, Godzilla Final Wars is definitely a Godzilla film, more so than Destroy All Monsters. Godzilla is present. He is, in fact, the most present, gets the most camera time of all the monsters. But the film isn't focused on him plot-wise the way Godzilla Final Wars is. So I say both of these are good examples of a kaiju adventure. It's not a versus film. It's not strictly about fighting, two monsters fighting, and it's certainly not a solo film. So it falls into this weird category I call the kaiju adventure. But part of that, too, is how well utilized are the monsters. If you're going to have a lot of monsters and you're not going to have the focus a versus film has, then part of what makes it fun is seeing the different uses of the monsters, and I guess how they help the plot as well. Both these films actually suffer from the same problem. Almost too many monsters, and they don't let the monsters have equal amounts of time. When I was younger and I found out Destroy All Monsters existed, I couldn't find a copy. My dad actually ordered a VHS from Japan. It came in this crazy container that had all the original Japanese poster art and stuff on it. It was an English dub. We did find an English dub, but I saw that poster on the front and saw all these monsters. Even on the back cover, there's a nice big shot of Varan. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Who are these other monsters I don't know about? I'm so excited. And you do, Gorosaurus was one. You get some nice shots of Gorosaurus you haven't seen before. Anguirus really gets to stand out and Destroy All Monsters. He looks fantastic, and he actually has some interesting roles to play throughout that film. But in general, outside of Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra gets a few nice shots. I'll give some credit, Manda, during the big Tokyo invasion. There's some really excellent shots of Manda. Again, a monster outside of Atragon we haven't seen. It's fun to see Manda interact in the universe. But, you know, poor Baragon, Varan, even the spider, Kumanga or Spiga, whichever you prefer, doesn't really get to do a whole lot. Why we even have Minya in the film, as ridiculous as it is, Godzilla Final Wars does a better job of justifying Minya. But, okay, so we have some good monster action here, but a lot of them are painfully underutilized and have barely any screen time. It's a shame. It's a shame. I would have, and in both cases, preferred that they cut down on the number of monsters and really given some of the monsters a moment to shine. Final Wars it's almost even more frustrating because we haven't gotten to see a lot of these monsters in so long. Like, most of the fan base had given up ever seeing King Caesar in a film again. Yet he's here, and yet he gets to do nothing. He gets like all of 3 minutes of screen time. Even the fight with him and Godzilla, almost all the other monsters get to do something more interesting than he does. And then he looks like a shining star compared to Hydra, the smog monster. It was like, why even have him there? Why any of it? That's one of the most frustrating things about Final Wars is the pacing. The director, in my opinion, feels far more interested in his alien invasions and his martial arts sequences than he does the actual kaiju, which is a shame because he's brought up a really interesting collection of kaiju, but they get such precious little time to actually shine. It's frustrating. As a fan, it's frustrating. And then, of course, we get to the end battle, at least with Destroy All Monsters. The end battle, we get to see Anguirus and Gorosaurus really shine. We get to see Godzilla do some nice, cool moves. Even Kumanga gets to spray some web on King Ghidorah. Final Wars, we have a weird half-hearted battle with Mothra and Gigan going on. Some nice shots, some fun combat, but not much to write home about. It's pretty brief. And then we have to deal with Monster X, who, if you've seen my other video, The Countdown of King Ghidorah, you know how I feel about Monster X. I think he's lousy. I think he looks like he belongs in an Ultraman movie more than a Godzilla film. Even the fight with him and Godzilla is like weirdly anthropomorphic. Suddenly Godzilla's got like karate moves going on. No, hate it. And then that Monster X gets more time than almost any other monster, and it's a shame because he sucks, and all the other Showa category monsters we would have loved to have seen more of. So, yeah, the monsters in both these films, it's a mixed bag. There are, strangely enough, Anguirus gets to really shine in both these films. His suit in both films looks outstanding. He gets some of the best action sequences, combat as well. Obviously, he gets a shining moment with the King Ghidorah fight at the end of Destroy All Monsters. And even his little weird soccer match with Godzilla is fun. He just, again, it's a wasted opportunity. He looks so good. You wish you'd seen more of him. So that's a good segue into the special effects of these films. And I'm sorry, fans of Final Wars, if it seems like I'm just beating up on this film. I would say Destroy All Monsters is a more even effort. There aren't a whole lot of moments in that for its time period compared to the other films in its category, there aren't a lot of eyesores. There's, blissfully, there's no stock footage. We actually get some really exciting scenes. I mean, especially the attack on Tokyo with Mothra, Rodan, Godzilla, Manda on the bridge coiling around. It's awesome. It's beautiful, and it's one of the most exciting city destruction sequences we've gotten probably since Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, I would say. Final Wars does have some really excellent shots. I brought up Anguirus. His attack on, I think he's in Shanghai, looks really good. And what's interesting with Final Wars is a lot more CGI than we've seen. Even within the Millennium series that's tiptoeing into this, really heavy on the CGI and to mixed effects. I'd say a good area that I don't mind for 2004 and for a film on its budget is Rodan's attack on New York. Yes, it is not hyper realistic, but it gives a good effect. It gives the impact in the right way, and we get to see, well, we actually get to see Rodan and see him do something, which is a pleasure. And we get to that effect of his like sonic boom wave that he leaves behind and the destruction he causes. That was an area where a lot of the CGI elements they added, I thought actually did look decent enough. It was passable. But then there's like Kamacuras, the mantis. There's times where it looks fine, and then there's times where it looks really miserable. Same with Manda's attack at the very beginning on the Gatango, the ship. Switches wildly from looking really excellent to looking like the worst video game you've played since the 64 was released. It's frustrating, and I mean, I heard the UFO ship that comes down at the beginning. It's like even the Sci-Fi Channel was putting out better graphics. If you don't have it, I would have much rather preferred them go for models. This is one of the things I respect and love about this genre, and especially the work that Toho and the latter Dai series brings, are how convincing and powerful actually having something real in front of the camera can be. And it confuses me that Final Wars opts so frequently for some CGI that I just don't think delivers half the time. It's a bummer. That said, though, there are, that giant crater at the end that you see Godzilla in Tokyo. There's some nice, really epic effects that would have been very hard to pull off practically. And so it's like if you gotta blur your vision and use your mind's eye, let your imagination take over, you can still have fun with a lot of what, at least the imagery that this film creates. So let's talk about the direction that these films take, because two very, very different directors tackling kind of similar concepts here. I want to try and get this one right. The director for Final Wars, Ryui Kitamura. My Japanese needs some work. Kitamura, I understand this is kind of his style. He throws a lot of genres into the same bag. He likes these big epic fight sequences. He borrows pretty shamelessly from other films. This film, God, it's almost like Michael Bay directing a Godzilla movie. There are so many unnecessary and extended action sequences that, frankly, what should have been just a really fun, big bang way for Godzilla to go, it is one of the few kaiju films I've seen that easily and completely overstays its welcome. Part of that is the pacing. As I said before, I think Kitamura is a lot more excited and interested in the human elements of this than the kaiju elements. The kaiju elements feel brief, and it feels like we have much larger gaps where the human action and the monster action are really on separate planes. The sequence that I find the most confusing, and this is kind of back into the monsters, is Ibra attacking like the petroleum power plant. Again, you want to talk like Michael Bay and a fascination with explosions. There's perfect reason for there to be explosions in this sequence, and yet there are still more explosions and seem even plausible. And then there's this weird moment where like cars are flying out of nowhere and crashing into each other and rolling. And then you have, it's an interesting touch to have the mutants actually try and tackle a monster, to see human foot soldiers trying to take down a monster. Not a terrible sequence, but why Ibra? I assume this director must have had some real love and fascination for Ibra Horror of the Deep. But why Ibra? It's not exactly a fan favorite. It's not exactly an exciting kaiju. And it feels, I think this sequence could have worked really well with almost any of the other kaiju he's using. But to have all this crazy action going on, all these exciting explosions, the mutants running and grabbing wires that are popping out of nowhere to chase the monster around the side of the building, and then it's a giant shrimp who looks more like a lobster. Why not Anguirus? Why not Kamacuras? Why not any of the other monsters? Why is it the giant shrimp that gets this crazy extended explosion orgasm? It's very bizarre to me. One of the things I have a hard time with this film too understanding is, what is meant to be an homage to certain films and what is just like kind of laziness on his part. I mentioned that the Xylians feel far more like Invasion of Astro Monster, at least in the way they handle their plans. And I can't tell if that is how specific that's supposed to be and how much that is just we need a basic alien plot line here. Fill in the blanks. There are a lot of nice. You can tell he's a fan, and he is trying to write a love letter back to the kaiju fan base. I mean, the Mechagodzilla music out at the Arctic base, the Gorath references, the Atragon references, and then even in the actors, actresses, getting Kumi Mizuno back in the action. As a Godzilla fan or a kaiju fan, it is a hard movie to resist just because there is so much of that fan service. But if I'm, taking my personal side out of this and stepping back and looking at it critically, he gets messy and I guess overlaps that fine line between what is homage and what is just kind of rehashing stuff we've seen so many times. Especially the end for Kaiser Ghidorah, who, I don't care for Kaiser Ghidorah, but whatever. Like having him shoot off the middle head. The middle head explodes. Are we referencing Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, or did we just need an action sequence? You get Godzilla stomping on one of the necks that's flailing around. A nice nod to Destroy All Monsters. I would hope so, but it also, the whole conclusion feels just kind of rushed and explosive and abrupt. Then it seemed like action, 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 just get the action done. So, all right, we'll move back over to Ishiro Honda over at Destroy All Monsters. This is not Honda's greatest film. This was originally, like Final War, supposed to be the end of the Showa series, and it does in a lot of ways. All the films after this feel very distinctly different. The 70 Showa films it is almost like two different categories or eras within the Godzilla universe. That said, the thing that I think is the most frustrating with Destroy All Monsters is that the human element, which tends to be one of Honda's strengths, is just lacking. There's some fun ideas. I mean, like I said, I think there's a lot of fun creativity with the Kilax, but the actual humans on Earth are just bizarrely dull, plain, and then just kind of weird, I guess, glazed over plot issues. One of them being the pilots, the crew of the SY-3, the spaceship. We never get a good explanation of, are they cops? Are they scientists? Are they astronauts? Are they soldiers? And they just kind of are there for any sequence you need. They can play any part, anytime. I mean, why call them down when there's problems on Monster Island? They're up on the moon. Wouldn't someone on Earth be able to come and help? I know the movie's supposed to be set in the future, so maybe that's part of the future culture that just doesn't get well explained or hashed into. But it feels lazy. A lot of the human elements do. That said, though, I think Honda handles the action better. Now, it's not the kung fu crazy Matrix action we have in Final Wars, but like the sequences where they're trying to find the Kilax base, right? It's tied in very nicely. The monsters are part of the action. They're in the ship trying to find the base, and Rodan comes and attacks the ship. They're on the ground in the woods trying to find the base, and they're outrunning Godzilla. It's things like that where Honda has incorporated the monster elements and the human elements together into, they are part of the same movie. Whereas Final Wars, for big sections, for me at least, feels like we forgot what movie we're in and what we're doing with this movie. Now, mind you, I do appreciate innovation and trying to bring something fresh and different to the Godzilla series. I'll give Final Wars some props for that. I think maybe it was just too much. if we had cut all those action sequences down just a little bit, and given our human characters a little more intrigue, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. Both films are really fun popcorn kaiju film. This is the grab a beer, take a hit off your pipe kind of kaiju film. Return of Godzilla, this is not. There's no interesting political dynamics being discussed here. So, okay, really quick to wrap this up, let's go into the music of both the films. This, again, not even close. The music for Final Wars sounds like some terrible made-for-TV movie, some terrible video game from the 90s. It's boring, it's unenergetic, and it doesn't feel like a kaiju film. They get some nice moments with Ifukube at the top, that nice little credit sequence they have, and I forget, I think maybe way after, at the end of the credits, at the end of the movie, you get back to Ifukube, but you have to listen to a terrible soundtrack through this movie. It is absolutely to the detriment of the film, in my opinion. Destroy All Monsters, on the other hand, is a shining moment for Ifukube. The military marches are the ones people tend to pick up from this film, and rightfully so. They are energetic, they're driving, they add a sense of excitement and energy to the film. They go a long way in helping the movie. So anyway, yeah, I think you guys know they're both fun films. You can't be a kaiju film and dislike either one of these, but for the scope and the epicness of them, they both tend to come up a little short of what they could have been. You know, that said, let's leave things on a positive note. Destroy All Monsters is, you know, reminiscent. It's a powerful film for me. As a little kid, it was so exciting. I loved it. And then Final Wars, the one thing I'll give that director is there is a nice, I guess, a respect to the character of Godzilla. I like that throughout that film, there is a sense of dread to Godzilla. Even releasing him to help him try and fight on the human side is like a gamble. And then he does incorporate this kind of interesting end bit where, you know, we see the little kid and the baby Godzilla both, you know, put up their arms in the don't fire position. There's an interesting little kickback, I guess, maybe to the politics of Ishiro Honda, of, you know, anti-war sentiment. There is a brief discussion about Godzilla being, you know, a punishment for what went on during World War II. In all the chaos that is Final Wars, he does find some moments to reground us with the monster, and Godzilla's he's badass. He's properly handled as the ultimate monster king in that film. Even if the monsters are kind of, you know, they have to be lowered in their power and abilities to make him look so powerful, it is fun to see a movie where he just trashes everything in his path. Even when the big final battle's done, he's still ready to go and destroy the city and destroy the Gatengo. I do appreciate, you can tell the director loves that character. I just don't think he was probably the right guy for that film in the end. All right, Kaiju fans. So till next time, I am the Kaijuologist, signing off from Denver, Colorado. We are the Mile High City. We are getting higher all the time. Have a good one.